Welcome back to Straightforward, a podcast about Taiwan, the island at the center of technological innovation and the global fight for democracy. I'm Channing Lee.
And I'm Libby Lange. And Channing, I feel like we have so much catching up to do.
I know, it's been forever, and we're back in our studio. Things look a little bit different. But rest assured to our audience who watches online, we will be changing a few things up. Just thank you for your patience with us.
New and improved Straightforward coming soon.
Yes. How have you been? It's been so long. What have you been up to this summer?
Yeah, I feel like it's been kind of a busy summer, both work-wise and travel-wise. And I know you have been also traveling almost kind of all around the world.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of... I almost said shopping. I've been doing a little bit of traveling, visited some family in California, of course. Bought a bunch of yummy snacks to share.
Thank you for your contributions.
Actually, I figured maybe for our episode, we can, since it's just the two of us this time, we will do some drinking of boba. But yeah, got to buy some very yummy snacks back home in Southern California, see family, which was lovely. I did visit Turkey. Saw a lot. I mean, it was my first time in the region. Yeah. I'm by no means an expert in the region. My tour guide actually was very familiar with Taiwan, which was really interesting. Apparently, he does a lot of tours for Taiwanese tourists, and so I was pleasantly surprised to know that lots of groups of Taiwanese tourists would visit Turkey, and he seemed to have a very friendly and positive view of Taiwanese tourists. So that was really interesting and surprising for me when I was in Turkey.
Okay, well, I'm headed out soon on my own trip with family to Spain, actually. Oh. So I will have to keep my eye out for any sort of Taiwan influences while I'm there.
No, that sounds so lovely. For this episode, we actually wanted to do something slightly different. It will just be Libby and me for this episode. So apologies if that's disappointing, but hopefully we can come to you with some good content.
Yeah, I know you, Channing, have been busy gathering some good content, actually.
Yes.
You have not just been traveling for fun.
Not just traveling for fun. So I wanted to talk to you about my trip to Dallas because I visited the Taiwan Expo. They called it Taiwan Expo USA. It was held in Dallas from August 14th through 16th. This was something that they actually did back in 2022 here in D.C., and I had gone to the last one. And it's basically a big show of all that Taiwan has to offer. I wish they could have shown more food and like the fun things that I think Taiwan can offer, but there, of course, was a lot of really important technology.
Can I ask, of all the places in the U.S., obviously you said the last time you were there, it was held in D.C. Why this time was it in Texas?
I had the same question. And turns out Taiwan and Texas actually do a lot together. Taiwan is about the size of a state, right? We've talked about this in past episodes. And it now makes sense to me that Taiwan would have this expo in Texas due to all the economic opportunities that they have to collaborate. Texas has become a really key partner for Taiwan in its relationship with the United States. Texas is actually the largest destination of Taiwanese investment in the U.S., something that I learned recently. And a lot of Taiwanese companies see Texas as a very attractive place to do business because there's plenty of land, there's plenty of energy, and there's a great university system and community college system for companies to tap in and work with the local governments, local schools to kind of build up these programs that will end up helping them build up the talent that they need for their companies. So it was really interesting to learn about all that was going on in Texas, which is quite far from D.C. It was funny because I would tell people that I was visiting from D.C. and they're like, oh, that's really far. And then I would say, well, actually, it's only about a 2.5 hour flight. And I said, for those who came from Taiwan, this is a much further flight. But I think for them, because Taiwan is so small, D.C. and Texas seems so far away. But
worlds away. Yeah, indeed.
Anyways, one thing that I found interesting about Texas and Taiwan's cooperation, they actually signed an MOU back in May to strengthen economic collaboration. And Texas has only signed this same or similar MOU with 2 other countries, so the UK and France. And so the fact that Taiwan was a third really shows how much I think the two can actually do together. And at the opening ceremony of this Taiwan Expo, they actually announced that they would be opening a Taiwan Trade and Investment Services Center in Dallas, and that will be a new office that obviously the Taiwan government runs, but it will help Taiwanese businesses understand how to best do business in the state.
Oh, that's amazing. I know that kind of subnational diplomacy, so Taiwan working with governments maybe below the national level, is something that we were both really interested in digging further into. So maybe for a future episode, something to talk about.
Yeah, no, I would love to, because I think it's so important for not those of us here in DC, but everybody to understand how much intertwined Taiwan is in our whole economy, which is something that I learned more about at the expo.
Yeah, and so I know that you got some good footage of the expo. So
yes.
For those of us like me who were not able to join,
yes.
see kind of what it looked like.
I want to show you. So let's see. So this was held at the convention center, and so for those who have not visited the Dallas Convention Center, it is this very long, lengthy building.
Oh, wow.
Flat.
Like something like the DC Convention Center, actually.
Yeah, but Texas is just so much bigger. Everyone was like, everything's bigger and better in Texas. And so, when you enter through your choice of double doors, you can go up the escalators and you'll see and I saw the giant Taiwan Expo USA 2025 sign. I got there around when it opened at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there was a good sizable crowd ready to, I guess, see everything that was in the expo. You walked in and there was this Team Taiwan sign. Mm-hmm. As we know, baseball is very popular. Hopefully will be a topic of future conversation on this podcast. And then you walk in and you just see so many people already talking with the different booths. You basically have a lot of tech companies showcasing what they're up to, both in Taiwan and companies that hope to expand their businesses in the U.S.
And so you walk in, you're in this huge convention center. What is the first thing that catches your eye?
So Foxconn was there. I was surprised to see them because we don't often hear about Foxconn in the U.S. Foxconn is one of the largest consumer electronics manufacturers, and you're never going to see their label on any of their products, so you wouldn't even know that it was actually a Taiwanese company making your electronics. So, for example, they're very well known for their business with Apple, right? They build a lot of smartphones, but again, most Americans don't know that. And so I was pleasantly surprised to walk in and see an electric vehicle that they designed. They called it the Foxtron. And again, they won't sell it under this label in the U.S. or anywhere. But, of course, when you walk in, there's a car there. It catches your eye. It's really pretty. It's an electric vehicle. They already sell it in Taiwan, actually.
It's also kind of amazing because, a consumer electronic like a phone or an LED screen is so different from the expertise you need to make a car.
Yeah. Foxconn, as I learned, actually has a huge data server business as well. And they do this all around the U.S. Actually, they have a lot of locations, and I can talk to you more about that in a second. But yeah, they have these different. Here, I can show you on the map. They basically have all these pavilions, right? You walk in, and first you see the intelligent technology section, and so they had all these companies that have been using AI in their operations. They have a section particularly for smart factory, and that was kind of like the manufacturing section. Advances in manufacturing. You have a section called Taiwan Excellence where they were showcasing, again, just different cool things that Taiwan is up to.
Hashtag Taiwan is cool.
They have a smart healthcare section as well. They had a food pavilion section, and then of course a culture, food, tourism area. They had a repack solutions hub, which was a little bit unique. I didn't even think about how much you have to think about the materials for your food containers or just box shipping containers, just everyday materials. And I guess with a little bit of science, you can come up with new materials, right? I guess that's kind of biotech. And then you have the tourism section, and Eva Air, the airline, had a section because they just opened a new flight, a direct flight from Dallas. So that was kind of the setup.
And so maybe, I know you started with the smart factory section. That's kind of an interesting topic for me. I know we've talked a lot here at SCSP about the need to kind of reindustrialize America, but not just sort of bring back manufacturing, but kind of reinvent, how we do our manufacturing to make it cost effective and efficient. And so I'm curious how the Taiwanese are thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found it really eye-opening because, frankly, here in the U.S., and I can't speak for everyone, but I don't actually think I know exactly how things are manufactured because all of our a lot of our manufacturing happens overseas, right? And so the average American is not going to know like how to build an iPhone, right? And therefore, because we don't do so much of this manufacturing in the United States, we're not actually thinking about how to advance our manufacturing capabilities, right? We're not thinking about how to build new technologies to make manufacturing more efficient and more effective. And that's what they were able to do. They had a robotics section here, and they were basically showcasing how different parts of the robot can help the arm move in certain ways. But you can add cameras, you can add sensors, and they can combine all this with AI to become like an intelligent, literally smart manufacturing system. They had a Lego model here of one of the systems that they run, and it's basically a sorting and matching system, but it's automated, right? They're using automation.
That's a great way to display your technology. I guess if it's too big to fly over to the U.S., just build it with Legos.
Yeah, I thought that was really fun. Here you can see again another robotic arm, and this one is scanning and presumably collecting data to for classification.
That's really interesting because I think we often think of robots in terms of, the ones that look like people or the ones that look like animals. And you kind of forget that some of the robots that are having the most immediate economic impact look a lot more like that.
Yeah, and that's why I was very happy to see them. But at the same time, I will admit, I see a robotic arm like this, and I might not necessarily know right away how it fits into a factory and how that helps the factory run faster. One of the companies had a digital display, and I don't think I have a video of it, but of kind of reimagining what a future factory could look like. And it was basically the screen was full of different workstations, and every workstation had one of these robots arms, and that robot arm was performing a function. And so it was kind of just reimagining the future of manufacturing, where if you don't have the labor to be able to build what you need to, but you have the robotic, obviously the engineering behind the mechanics of the robot, but also that AI-enabled software, then you're able to really just manufacture all this at much lower cost, right? You don't necessarily need humans in the factory, so that was really neat. One thing that really struck me about the fact that Taiwan has all this smart manufacturing technology was, here's a partner whose companies are really eager to partner with us in the United States. If we are trying to build up our manufacturing capabilities, we really should be working with our friends who have these manufacturing technologies, because I think it'll just help. I mean, both of us will be able to build up our systems much stronger, and ultimately Taiwan could be a really good partner as we seek to rebuild our manufacturing capabilities in this country.
So beyond manufacturing, what are some other interesting installations that you saw while you were there?
Yeah, they had a Teddy Boa section. Teddy Boa is like the drone alliance that the government put together to help spur drone manufacturing.
And by the government, you mean Taiwan's government?
Yes, Taiwan's government. Teddy Boa is a drone alliance that the Taiwan government put together to it's both signaling, but also, creating that demand, right? And so there were a couple of drone companies there to showcase their technologies. They're drone manufacturers, a lot of them, and so they were able to produce drones, and they call them, of course, as we've talked about, non-red supply chains, right? They are able to completely build these in Taiwan with materials that don't come from China. So that was very promising. I still think they aren't able to build enough per month per need, but that's a separate topic. Healthcare was a big one. I think Taiwan's often underappreciated for their healthcare. They've actually made a lot of advances in this field, and so I'm not a healthcare expert at all, but I did see some cool ways in which they're trying to integrate AI into screening for cancer, or helping to just sort through data and predict the chances really of a diagnosis, right? So that's really cool technology that they're already implementing in their hospitals in Taiwan. And so I think a lot of these companies also came to the expo hoping to start building those relationships with U.S. hospitals as well.
And so beyond all of the cool things that you saw on the floor, I imagine it was kind of like our expo, and that there were also some interesting talks going on at the same time. So were you able to catch any of those?
Yes, they did have a kind of speaking forum on U.S.-Taiwan collaboration. They called it supply chain security or supply chain cooperation. The biggest takeaway that I got hearing from different tech companies speak, both at that speaking program and throughout the 2 days, workforce. workforce challenges and workforce opportunities in the U.S.
In the U.S.
Yes,
So, okay,
in the
interesting.
U.S. And so again, when we go back to that question, right, why do Taiwanese companies want to come to the U.S. and invest here? Right? They could actually go anywhere else, right? Obviously, here, we're American. We want we want investment to come to the U.S. But if you're Taiwan, you can go anywhere you want. And talent apparently was a huge draw for these companies because Taiwanese companies really believe in our education system. And it's not just, primary school education, but it's literally all the way up to the university level and, like I mentioned before, the community college level. Taiwanese companies, when they come and invest, I guess any company, right? When they come and invest in the U.S., and it's not just in Texas, but other states, right? They've been doing this in Wisconsin and Ohio and Indiana, elsewhere. They are looking for communities with which they can partner, right? And so they're able to, work with community colleges to come up with academic programs where these colleges will help recruit, ultimately for their companies, but they end up forming this really good symbiotic relationship with the local communities. And so they're forming joint ventures with different cities and around the U.S. to kind of, really bring that investment into the community. But it's not just investment in terms of business, right? It's actually an investment in the community because if a tech company is going to enter a city or a town in the U.S. and be there, build their headquarters there for decades on end, they also want to invest in the people. And they are helping to enrich the curriculums. They're making sure that the students are able to learn the skills that will prepare them to have jobs. And so it's really this whole ecosystem that they're building here in the U.S. So when we're thinking about investment, right, it's not just like I'm going to slap $100 billion in this town to like build a chip fab or something like that, right? No, it's actually investing in the people. It's, forming those relationships with the local governments. And so I was really fascinated and impressed, honestly, about all that was going on. And these tech companies were so excited about all these opportunities, right? Like I mentioned, right? It's the land, it's the power, it's the people. So that was really fantastic. And I think Taiwanese companies are also realizing that they need to make more of a name for themselves here in the U.S. because they want to attract this top talent. And so ultimately, I guess, whether it's Texas or other states that this is happening, and, it seems like a really good model for future states to adopt, or for Taiwan to adopt in more states, right? How do you sign those MOUs with those state level governments? How do you work with local governments to build up that symbiotic relationship?
Yeah, I guess, when you say that, it does make me realize that it's kind of about making these jobs aspirational, right? Like people here in the U.S. might think, I want to go work at XYZ big tech company because they know the names of those companies. They know what they do. Mm-hmm. But like you said, not everybody knows what Foxconn does, even though it sort of, underpins our daily life.
Yeah, I was wondering, since you're from Iowa, like, do people know of Taiwanese companies? Like, is there?
That's a great question. Honestly, I would say before, I got interested, I didn't know of any Taiwanese companies. I think people are probably more familiar with Taiwan's Little League baseball team than with, a specific Taiwanese manufacturer. So I think that is definitely like a good goal to be working toward. And I'll be checking in back home and seeing if, that work is making a difference. Yeah. And last but not least, I know when you were showing me the map just now, you pointed out that there was a snack area. And so I have to ask what that was about. You're talking about all these high-tech installations, but there's also a Taiwanese foods stand.
Yes, absolutely. They had this area, they called it the food pavilion. And so they had all these fun snacks. Some of them are some of my favorites, including this guai guai. They had a giant bag of guai guai. It was so fun. So guai guai means like well-behaved. And it's a kind of a puff snack.
Yeah, kind of like, it looks like a packing peanut.
Yes, I actually wish I brought some to share. But, as we know, right, guai guai is actually really important for engineers in Taiwan because they want their machines to behave. And so they often put bags of this green guai guai on their computers or on their cash registers, right? So if you go to Taiwan, you might see a lot of these bags of guai guai just randomly, laying around.
And so I know really you brought back some snacks for us.
Yes.
So thank you, of course, for always thinking of us, even when you're away. We also wanted to accompany today's episode with bubble tea. Unfortunately, we're recording a little early, so the shops were not open. So we are making do with some canned bubble tea.
Yeah.
And I figure we can just dig in now.
I've never actually had canned bubble tea.
This is actually my
This
first
might
time
be my
too.
first one. Well,
All right,
cheers.
well, cheers.
This is so funny. I wonder how we're gonna drink the boba.
I know. I feel like I need a straw,
I also feel like I need a straw.
but the tea itself is actually not bad.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I actually don't know how we're gonna.
I was going to
maybe
say,
we
I
forgot
don't
about
think
that.
I'm going to get to bubbles. Honestly, I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I do. Just because maybe I'm a boba snob, but I would think that
Yeah.
fresh is best. But
I don't know if this is something I would like drink all the time, because if I had the option to just go
but
into
it
a boba
tastes
shop.
like if you've ever had like the really cheap boxed milk tea that you can get at 7-Eleven in Taiwan. That's like 10 NT dollars, which is probably
30 cents.
What, 30 cents? That's exactly what this is reminding me of.
Well, I'm sure this is more than 30 cents, but all right. Well, so that was it for Taiwan Expo. I hope they intend to come to DC in the future again, because I think it's really important for us to see that here. Again, really awesome to see these Taiwanese tech companies that have both already established presence in the U.S. and are looking to expand their presence in the U.S. come and just, mingle with the local community. And so, yeah, I just thought that was something fun that I wanted to share on this podcast, because not sure how many people were able to make it out there and see all the technologies that they had there.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for bringing that in. And of course, thanks for bringing the snacks in. But obviously that is not the only news that we have to catch up on. A lot has happened in Taiwan over the summer as we have been releasing our Expo episodes. Obviously the news has not stopped. And so I thought today would be a good opportunity for us to kind of just catch up on, what's going on in Taiwan.
Yeah, no, the summer was actually quite full of activity in Taiwan. I mean, which one do you want to talk about first?
So I think the first bit of news that we could cover are these Han Kuang military exercises. These are exercises that are held every year. This year they were held in July. This is, I think, the 41st time that Taiwan has held these exercises. And again, these are a yearly event, but I really do think this year they got a lot more attention, even in our own media.
Yeah, absolutely. And in July, they held them for 10 days, which was longer than past years, right? It used to be 5, so doubling the amount of time that these exercises were held. And I think we were able to see a lot more imagery come out of it, because for the first time they had a big focus on urban resilience, right? We often forget how urban of an environment it is in Taiwan. Most people do live in cities and, tall buildings. People are using public transportation. A lot of people on motorcycles. People drive, but, it's a very urban environment. So in the case of any conflict or emergency, people actually need to know how to respond. And therefore, I think it was great that they had that focus on urban resilience. We saw videos of soldiers running through the MRT, the metro, using the public transportation infrastructure in order to get where they needed to go, which was really interesting. But bringing these exercises to the people, I think, was such an important part of it, because people need to be prepared.
I think another thing that was really interesting about these exercises specifically was the way that they involved local actors. So again, these are national level drills involving the military. But when you think about Taiwan, despite it being small, there's actually quite a bit of local government beneath the national level, right? And in the event of an emergency, there's going to need to be a lot of coordination between whether, the national and local when it comes to something like that. So everyone knows what they need to be doing in that scenario. And I think they really tried to make that a focus this time around.
And I think the last piece that we took away from the outside looking in was that Taiwan deployed a lot of new weaponry, new capabilities for these exercises, right? We saw the deployment of U.S.-made HIMARS rocket systems, new Abrams tanks, some unmanned systems, and all of this was to show that Taiwan was taking their military modernization seriously and that they were trying to demonstrate that they have these new capabilities. Granted, I would have liked to see more maybe of the cheaper unmanned drone systems in play, but either way, it was good to see that they were taking seriously that they need to modernize their equipment.
Another big piece of news that, of course, I think we need to touch on are these recall elections that Taiwan held in July. July was a very busy month in Taiwan.
Yes, a very busy month for Taiwan in July. Right at the beginning of the month, they had the military drills, and at the end of the month, they had these recall elections. So in order to fully understand the recall elections, we have to go back a year. to May of 2024, right? That's when President Lai was inaugurated. You were there. SCSP was there. And, obviously President Lai and the Democratic Progressive Party won the presidency, but they actually lost the legislature, the legislative yuan, right? And so in the last year or so, they found it very difficult to pass legislation. Basically, it became a split government, and you have, of course, the Kuomintang as one opposition party, but you also had the TPP, the Taiwan's People Party, forming that coalition with the KMT. So it became a little complicated, kind of messy. We've seen some fights in the legislature, right, happening.
Seeing that kind of legislative backup, lots of civil society groups kind of started this campaign that they referred to as the Great Recall, trying to recall some of these legislators across Taiwan through Taiwan's electoral process, where if you get a certain number of signatures, you can sort of launch a recall campaign, and then if you get a certain number of voters from that legislator's district, you can recall them and they'll hold a new election, right? And so I think eventually they secured enough votes to attempt to recall 24 legislators in this first round, and they held those recalls, as you said, in late July. None of the recalls ended up passing, right? So the final votes, no legislators ended up being recalled. There will be a smaller second round of recalls happening actually, after our recording, but before this podcast is released. I think there will be 7 more recall votes upcoming. But again, the first round out of 24, no legislators were recalled.
One of the concerns that the DPP had with the KMT officials, they were concerned that the KMT representatives were too, quote, pro-China, right? That they had too much engagement with Chinese officials. And the KMT's position on that piece was, well, we want dialogue because we think it's important. So that was a big piece that I think international media paid a lot of attention to. But I think ultimately one reason why these recall votes failed was that, in order to recall, you need to have people voting to recall the very officials that they just elected. And ultimately, I think they decided, again, because of different local interests, whether it's economics, whether it's, whatever, they decided that they actually were happy with their representatives. So I think that was a point of friction. The second piece that came out of this was also critiques on the defense spending. And again, I'm just thinking about pieces that were picked up on international media, right? There's a lot of criticism for the KMT wanting to slash defense spending, and what that would mean for, say if the United States, were to chip into defending Taiwan, it's not a good look for Taiwan to be cutting defense spending at this time.
Yeah, and so I think, this is a challenging moment in Taiwanese politics for all sides. I think everyone is going to have to think deeply about what governing will look like with the system that is in place going forward and with the legislators that are in place going forward. And so I think this is something that we're definitely going to keep our eyes on. And I think, in future episodes, we're hoping to also speak with people who were on the ground to see that recall and to see the aftermath of it as well, to kind of see how all sides are reacting.
Well, I think those are the 3 main pieces of news that we wanted to cover today, right? The Taiwan Expo happened in Dallas, loads of fun. You had the Han Kuang exercises happening in Taiwan with a big focus on urban resilience. And then you have these great recall elections that really highlight yet a new episode or new chapter in Taiwan's democratic life. Just a preview for our audience, the future of Straightforward, right? We've been doing this for a few months, and we were able to, of course, film some live episodes at our own AI Plus Expo, which was very, very fun. Thank you so much to those who joined us live. It was wonderful to see you. We will now look forward to bringing guests on that are not just from Taiwan, but those who are contributing to anything Taiwan related from inside and outside of Taiwan.
Yeah, and I think also, we laid a good foundation with our first set of episodes, and now I think, we'll be able to keep up a little more with the news cycle and hit some of those topics that people are seeing in the news, hopefully kind of as they're seeing them. And I know in our usual episodes when we have a guest, we love to ask them for a recommendation. And, today I like to think of you as the guest. I feel like I spent a lot of time asking you questions.
Oh, my gosh.
So, from your time at the Taiwan Expo, what would you recommend?
Ooh, what I recommend? Getting a robot arm to do your chores. Honestly, probably the green guai guai. Okay, to be totally honest, I actually like the original flavor better. So if you... we'll put a little image of the guai guai at this point in the video if you're watching on YouTube, so you can see. But My favorite guai guai flavor is actually the original Ryungwei. It's actually yellow packaging. So while the green one might be good for engineers, I would recommend the yellow one because that is my favorite.
All right. Well, hopefully you bring some of those in for us as well.
Yes. As always, if you have any questions or want to reach out to us, please do not hesitate to email straightforward@scsp.ai. That is straight as in the Taiwan Strait, STRAIT, forward@scsp.ai.
And we look straight forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.